welcome to this second masterclass show with me, Thebe Ikalafeng, representing Africa Brand Leadership Academy, where we're really trying to shape the minds or to sharpen the minds that are going to build the brands that build this continent. I'm quite excited about today's topic because today we really talk about something that a topic that at some stage in our genesis or in our life, we used to think this is a foreign topic, the fourth industrial revolution. It's the whole idea of how technology is now perhaps the air that we breathe, or we can't live without technology. And I'm quite excited that, most importantly, that joining me today on this panel, an esteemed group of Africans. This is an Africa-focused initiative, an Africa-focused conversation, and I'm quite excited today that we have in our midst Professor Tshilidzi Marwala, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Johannesburg, quite a prolific writer, thinker, teacher, sage in the area of fourth industrial revolution. We've got Miranda, Nyathi, who specializes in threat intelligence at Standard Bank. So it's quite an interesting topic, by the way, interesting title of a work. And we've got Kola Olajide as a co-founder of Bridge Labs, who's done amazing work in the area of using technology as a bridge as well, to education or the channel to education. And Mark Kaigwa, who's probably one of the foremost thinkers in terms of how you apply technology or digital to the area of marketing communication. So that's going to be our topic today. Whether we as Africans are ready, whether we are ready to lead in this industrial age, whether we lead particularly this fourth industrial age, because we're just getting the hang of technology, of mobile, of the internet being the key driver of commerce and communication. So without further ado, as one says, I'm going to ask Professor to just give us a context, just to contextualize this topic on the fourth industrial revolution, and and then we pick it up from there, and I'll get the rest of the panel to join us to talk further about this concept. Professor Marwala, as I've said before, is the Deputy Vice Chancellor of the University of Johannesburg. His research interests multidisciplinary, including the application of computational intelligence to engineering, computer science. So this is 145 awards globally in this area. Prof, this sounds like some big English, especially in the continent and particularly in the country here in South Africa, where math and science are at the lower rung of our capability. Without wasting time, Professor Marwala, give us a context of this fourth industrial revolution.
No, thank you very much, Thebe, for that introduction. I have prepared a short presentation, which I am going to go through it quite quickly, so that people can actually understand what the fourth industrial revolution is concerned. The way I am going to approach my presentation, I will talk about what needs to be done. What do we need to do as Africans for us to actually be full participants in this revolution, not spectators. Now, just this morning, I published a book published by the academic press, Rational Machines and Artificial Intelligence. It really talks about the future of humans. What happens to humans when machines do almost everything that we do? Now, this is an example of a robot at a university in South Korea that I spent some time. As you can see, it is able to drive a car. It is able to do all sorts of things that are done by a human being. Because it does these things that are done by a human being, it is almost human. And because it is almost human, it is artificially intelligent. It can open doors. It can do all sorts of things that are quite important for humans. Because it is able to do all these things, is it fair to send people to dangerous areas if we can actually be able to send robots. Because it is a machine, it is now being used in factories because you can make it work for 24 hours, something that you wouldn't do to a human being. Now, this is what is called the fourth industrial revolution. We missed the first industrial revolution. Much of Africa has not industrialized. That was the use of machines to produce. The second industrial revolution, about electricity and mass production of goods and services, we have not really been full participants in this. We missed it again. Then the third industrial revolution was the electronic age. Again, we missed it. Now we are living in what is called the fourth industrial revolution, which is basically a confluence of technologies in the digital, physical, and biological spaces. What do we need to do? The first thing that we need to do is to invest in human capital. We are not going to be full participants unless we invest in human capital. What does it mean? It basically means we have to train people who understand technology, whether it is artificial intelligence, whether it is blockchain, whether it is robotics, and so on and so forth. There is no other way. This is really the only way we can move forward. Teach people to understand technology and do it as early as possible. Now, what are the key skills that should come out of this? This comes from the World Economic Forum. Complex problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, people management, coordinating with others, emotional intelligence, judgment and decision making, service-oriented, negotiation and cognitive flexibility. These are skills that are actually quite difficult to automate. If you do not have these skills, your job probably is going to disappear because a robot is going to replace you. Now, the second thing that we need to do, we need to invest in this technology called artificial intelligence because it is really the main driver of the fourth industrial revolution. And artificial intelligence is nothing but a technology that makes machines intelligent. Because we are able to make machines intelligent, today, the chess champion is no longer a human being. It is a machine. Because of this technology, machines are able to diagnose diseases better than human doctors, with all sorts of implications on the future of medicine. There are many types of artificial intelligence, soft computing, computational intelligence, but the most dominant one is what is called machine learning, which is the use of statistics and data in order to build intelligent machines. Now, this is some of the examples of the work that was done. This is when somebody has lost their voice box, but they can still move their tongue. So this device that you see here, we designed it here in Johannesburg, and from the movement of the tongue, you are able to synthesize what a person is actually saying. Now, with adversarial networks, you can be able to synthesize somebody's voice as they would have spoken it. We actually have a US patent on this. This was a MIT Technology Review article that was actually covering our invention. Now, this is another example of the work that we did. Doctors look at these images, and the goal is actually to diagnose a disease called pulmonary embolism, very dangerous disease. Again, artificial intelligence is able to make such diagnosis with accuracy of over 99%, better than a human doctor. That, of course, it depends on the mood of that doctor, whether they slept enough the night before. All these things that machines do not have. Again, this is an example of the application of AI to monitor structures. This is a structure that collapsed in Johannesburg in Sandton. Now, if you had actually deployed artificial intelligence to be able to sense the movement of this bridge, take it to an intelligent machine and be able to tell you that this bridge is about to collapse long before it collapsed, and you would have saved the lives of 3 people who actually died during that time. Now, the other thing that we need to do is to establish a platform for advanced manufacturing and new materials. Industrialization of today cannot be done without automation. That's very, very important. and automation that you need to adopt cannot be done without artificial intelligence. South Africa was very industrialized for quite a long time, but it has started deindustrializing. And the reason why it has deindustrialized is because we have not invested in new technologies of production. And the jobs that we used to have simply migrated from Johannesburg and other parts of South Africa to Asia, because we are not producing at a competitive way. Now, the other recommendation is to secure and avail data to enable innovation. Data is the new oil. Data is the new oil, like the old oil, and Nigeria can be able to teach us quite a great deal. If you do not process it, you are not going to exploit all the advantages of that oil. What is happening today is that you have American companies such as Facebook, such as Twitter, that are basically mining our data. They are mining our oil. We don't even know how much data they are mining, but they don't just mine it for the sake of mining it. They actually monetize it. Let us avail this data, whether it is data of our call centers, whether it is data in our hospitals, so that innovators can build systems, AI systems, that we can be able to sell to the rest of the world. You know, of course, when we do that, we have to take into account of the issue of privacy, digital heritage. Very, very important, because data of us as a people, whether it is of our language that is being used for speech recognition, is really our heritage, and we need to protect it, and we need to monetize it so that our people can be able to benefit from it. No, the other thing that we need to do is to incentivize future industries, platforms, and applications of 4IR technologies. One American economist was asked, summarize the whole of economics in one word, and his answer was incentives. We have to incentivize people to actually invest into these technologies, whether it is in branding and marketing, whether it is in small businesses or large businesses. Some of the incentive schemes might actually be taxation. It might be access to research and development infrastructure in organizations such as the CSIR. It might be in special economic zones where you have favorable terms as a business person. And of course, the big incentive is the 1.2 billion African market. The African market is very, very important. We need to open it up. We need to increase connectivity. We need to increase free trade. Of course, the African Union now has just adopted the free trade agreement. We need to do that. We need to remove barriers of movement of people, because once this becomes one market, then Africa will never be the same again. We need to build 4IR infrastructure. This requires us to have secure energy. It requires us to build data centers. Sometimes you might have to buy the cloud, but you can build your own data centers. It might mean connectivity, 5G technologies, to make sure that we are connected well into the internet so that our businesses can actually succeed. Of course, it means spectrum. Now, different industries now want their own spectrum. Traditionally, we used to think spectrum should only be awarded to telecommunication companies. As educational institutions, we want to have our own spectrum so that our robots that are in our campuses can communicate with one another without necessarily having to go through the big telecommunication companies, the computing infrastructure, connectivity, and so on and so forth. We need to review and amend policy and legislation. You have companies that are operating in Africa without due regards to laws. For example, Airbnb. Even in my village, you have Airbnb, but we can't tax it because our laws only tax organizations that are domiciled in South Africa. We need to update all our laws so that they are in line with the developments of the fourth industrial revolution. And finally, we really need to be people of action. In our continent, we speak quite a great deal. The biggest challenge is to implement. And on implementing all these things, we have to understand that there is more knowledge in private hands than in public hands. which means the role of public-private partnerships cannot be emphasized enough. Now, what are some of the leadership lessons that we can draw so that we can be able to lead our people in this era? I think the leaders of today must understand society, economy, politics, and technology. Very, very important. Illiteracy is no longer the inability to read and write. The inability to understand technology is a new form of illiteracy. When we talk about adult-based education, it's not about just teaching adults to read and write. We need to teach them about technology. The leader of our time, of the 21st century, must read and read widely. One US president called Harry Truman once said that not all readers are leaders, but good leaders are readers. Very, very important. The leader of our time must be hyper-passionate about the development of society. If you are hyper-passionate about the development of society, you will not have problems of corruption. You will not have problems of underinvestment into critical infrastructure in our education, in our hospitals, and in our communities. We need to build thinking skills, logical, quantitative, and execution-oriented. We need to be educated and be passionate about education. We need to be effective communicators. And I cannot emphasize enough because obviously Thebe is one classic example of an effective communicator. And especially for those of us who are trained in the technical subject, we need to learn to communicate. And finally, the leader of our time must understand the grand challenges confronting the world, especially the African continent, the problem of connectivity, the problem of education, the problem of the building of the nation state. By the way, if you want to know more about this, I have my latest book, Leading in the 21st Century. I'm glad that Thebe, you have actually bought the book because our time is now. And if we orientate ourselves as Africans well, this is going to be our century. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prof. You're right, Prof. I have got a copy of the book, so I'm quite excited to go dig into it. I thought you were going to start another one, Prof. So, Prof, you're very prolific. Prof, before you go, there's a couple of things which interested me about your presentation, but I want to start in a more practical one. It sounds like with AI, this is the end of human beings. Is there still a place for us in this world? Because if AI can think better, if through AI, computers can think better, they can perform better, more efficiently than human beings. So then there's no place for humans anymore left on this earth. Is this the end of our work?
No, absolutely. I mean, there are many things that AI cannot be able to do. Like, for example, AI cannot exercise friendship. It cannot be able to counsel somebody who is really down because they have lost a bereaved person. It can't do that. Those are human things, you know. It cannot be able to. It does not have human. That's why the skills that I have indicated and they were indicated by the World Economic Forum. If you check, these are human skills. Judgment. It does not have good judgment, you know. So there is a role for human beings.
So well, now that I'm glad that we left and that we've got a place here, there's another challenge that I'm facing as I'm digesting your presentation. So you said we need to invest in for our infrastructure. So now in this continent, we are facing so many other problems: inequality, lack of jobs, 30 to 60%, depending on where you are, unemployment, and now with COVID. From a priority perspective, do you think we'll be able to do that in this continent? Because it seems like that we've got now other pressing matters. And as you can see in many countries now, many can't even afford to pay for their own vaccines. And as a result, they've had to borrow money. And they can't pay for a basic vaccine, which enables us to at least stay alive. How are we going to pay for anything else?
And that is why the role of private actors cannot be emphasized enough. I mean, let us look at what MTN, for example, has done in the continent. I mean, quite impressive. We go to, I spent quite a bit of time in Rwanda. I am the chairman of the African Center of Excellence of Internet of Things in Kigali. I have been to Uganda, and you see the connectivity, you know. What we ought to understand is that this infrastructure is a necessary infrastructure for us to actually be able to tackle the problems that you have talked about. Can you tackle inequality and poverty without connectivity? No, because that small-scale farmer in a village must have access to the market. And the only way they're going to have access to the markets is through connectivity. So I don't think it's a question of either or, it is both. We have to do all.
So Salif Johnson, the former first female leader in the continent, once said that Africa is not poor, it is poorly led. Now you've just said in your closing slide that from our leaders, we want our leaders to know about society, economy, technology, in politics. Aren't they just mostly concerned with politics? Are you not asking too much of this leadership? Or do you think we've got the right type of leaders? Do you think they can unlearn the habits that they have now?
You know, one of the things that I talk about in that book, I quote one of our ancestors, Kwame Nkrumah. He said at independence in the late 50s, he said, "Seek ye first political kingdom, and all else shall follow." Unfortunately, the all else part did not follow. And the reason for that was because whenever we think of leadership, we think of politics. Let us remove politicism in our society. Leadership is not about politics alone. It is about that person who is developing an app that is going to be used to improve agriculture. It is that person in our community who is a pillar of that community, who is counseling people who are in hardship. It is that small lender in our village, we call them Mashonisa in South Africa, who actually makes people give resources to people or borrow people so that they can be able to go and start their own businesses. We have to make leadership broader than just politics. Kwame Nkrumah gave us liberation. He ushered the era of African liberation. Now we need another revolution, the revolution that is going to unlock the economic opportunities that are in the African continent.
Prof, I think perhaps I want to end it off on with one question. My last question to you is: we're in a difficult time now with COVID and COVID-19 and the lack of vaccine accessibility in the continent. How are we going to balance the two now?
Well, I actually think that we obviously must create a platform for us to be able to manufacture vaccines. I mean, South Africa, for example, what happened to our ability to create vaccines? Because we used to have that, you know. I'm glad now that Aspen, a South African company, will actually be making some of these vaccines in Port Elizabeth, you know, in Eastern Cape, the name has changed. So let's do that. And it should not just be restricted to South Africa. When you go to Nigeria, must also be creating a platform for the manufacturing of vaccine. The human capacity is there. You know, when I travel outside the continent, the number of people, I was in Singapore, and I see one of the famous professors there was from Nigeria in nanotechnology. You know, we have these people, they are there. How do we mobilize Africans in the diaspora so that they can be able to contribute towards the development of the Africa that we want to build now, and it has to be built now?
Prof, I want to thank you so much for giving us the time to just give us a broad context, because I think you've painted the picture of I'm not sure if it is the opportunity or it's the picture of the challenge I had. But I think it's a mixture. It's a mixture of both. And we're quite grateful you were able to join us this afternoon. And most importantly, grateful that with your books, leading in leading in the 21st century, and many others goes in the gap, that you at least are contributing to this challenge and the problem that we are putting down some insights that we can digest. Prof, have a lovely one and a happy Easter to you, and thank you for joining us today.
Just
yes,
before I finish, can you hear me?
Yes.
Just before I finish, I have been trying to take a picture of you carrying my book, and you are just moving it. Kevin, don't go anywhere. I need to. Yeah, you see, that's exactly what I wanted.
That's what you want.
I have good ones. Now I will put them on Facebook. Thank you very much, Terry.
Prof, thank you so much, and thank you for joining us. So, thank you so much, Prof. I'm now going to invite them. So I started with the professor, and now I'm going to the students, who are actually no longer the students, but they're actually the leaders in the space. And I want to start with Miranda. I mean, Miranda is quite one of the youngest. I'm not sure if it's one of the few, or if not the only, at least the only one I know, young people. I don't want to say women, certainly people of African descent or indigenous Africans in the area of cyber security, or as she said to me, threat intelligence. And Miranda is an educator, is into analytics, she designs software. She's just a multidisciplinary person. She's an example of the type of women this continent routinely presents to the world. It's part of our DNA. Welcome, Miranda.
Hi, Dr. Thebe. Thank you for having us. And there's actually quite a number of us in this industry. I just don't think like we get, everyone is as lucky as I am to have this kind of platform. But there's a lot of young Black people in the cybersecurity space. Yes, maybe a lot of them, you'll find them doing a lot of operational cybersecurity work. But there's a lot of us. I just think we need to bring a lot more people into the light to see like the industry is not so white male dominated. It's quite balanced, and I think my employer, Standard Bank Group, is also doing such a great job. It's very intentional about bringing young Black talent into this kind of spaces, and also like to the decision-making table. So there's quite a lot of us. I'm just privileged to be one of them right here.
My universe has expanded by one, obviously, in the space of cybersecurity. Among African women. So welcome. I want to pick up where Prof left off, because Prof, you know, one of the points that Prof led spoke about is perhaps the challenges that we face now. Spoke about data, privacy, cybersecurity. I want to pick up those two. Now, Miranda, I think when I spoke earlier that, you know, in our continent, for many years before we started digitalizing, before the M-Pesas, before, you know, mobile money and all those, we're used to ideas like 419 scams, where, you know, people will call you about your great-grand uncle who's about to give you millions of dollars. You just have to pass on your bank account. And a little bit of, but I always tell people in my joke, I said, to me, that was the forerunner of mobile money transfer. That's how it started. That is, so it started here in the continent. Maybe I can give Nigeria a bit of credit, but I think it's a continental thing. Are we in trouble though now, seeing that, you know, and particularly during COVID, that we pretty much were locked in our rooms and we couldn't go anywhere else, and meaning that the computer was everything for us, or technology was everything for us? Are we in trouble? What are the numbers looking like in terms of cybersecurity out there?
I mean, I think that's the beauty of technology, right? Because I think everyone was worried now that we're working from home. Are we still going to protect our corporate networks and everything? And yes, we're able to do that. That's the beauty about technology. And I think for me, the most interesting thing about the whole data privacy thing is how security is slowly becoming a deal breaker in business. We're usually the buzz killer before, like the developers never really wanted to hear anything, but now you actually have to make your users or your clients really believe that you're in a secure network, that data is kept really well. And I think for me, I want to jump back a little bit, right? I think we were even like ingested in the middle of the dead IR, right? The dead IR was created without us. We're literally just like a causality in the mistakes made by developers. I hope Kola won't kill me. But I really think like one of the things I thought the prof will also highlight, right, is like developers are really in this belief that they're creating something really cool, someone is going to use it and it's going to change the world. They just want to make it work, right? And eventually security will pop up at the end when something goes wrong, right? And I think also in the age of like UX, everyone thinks of their user as a good user, but sometimes the person that's going to actually take down your platform or your app is not a foreign person. It's like one of the people that's been using your application for a number of years, just learning how it works and all of that. So when you design, you actually have to have us as security specialists at the beginning. And I think that's the opportunity that 4IR kind of presents for us, is that we get to be actually now at the creation of this entire industry. Now people are actually aware of the implications, the financial loss, their reputation, if you don't actually consider security. And I think people need to also do away with the idea that we don't promote agiles. I mean, we're technology specialists ourselves. We were once developers. We understand how the agile approach is very important for business. We're not here to stifle anyone's creativity. We're just saying, put us on while we're there so we don't have to do corrections at the end. It's harder to unlearn than to just learn from the beginning, right? But the issue also of like having 4IR, it doesn't mean like 3IR is going to actually disappear, because we're still at the entry of it. From our perspective, this is actually creating the attack. It's actually increasing the attack vector. We now have to keep up with the 3IR challenges while we get ourselves ready. But this is kind of complexity that we'd like to live in, because we see opportunities in actually existing in both, right? Where we're correcting, but also we're creating. And I think, sorry?
I'm listening to be correcting and creating. I want to get Kola into this, because you already started accusing him of things. So before he accuse you, like you say, Kola is obviously one of the foremost social entrepreneurs, well-respected, founder of Bridge Labs. Has designed solutions in education, in marketing, in insurance, in banking. I know you know Kola. When I started Africa Brand Leadership Academy, one of Kola's partners, Musa, called me, says to me, "You can't teach without our technology. So we need to talk. You need to talk to us." Kola, I'm listening to both Prof. We spoke with Prof was here. We spoke earlier about the challenges that the continent faces, and he says we need to teach. We need to invest in 4IR. Now, I'm wondering, Kola, seeing that this is your space, the creating of those type of solutions, perhaps I will focus on the educational part. Isn't this another expense, Kola, that we cannot afford in the continent?
Cool.
We have Kola with us.
Cool. All right. So once again, Thebe, thanks for having me. Now, I think when it comes to education in 4IR, there's a lot of great work going on the continent, right? The curriculum frameworks are becoming more responsive to change, because the tech world moves very fast. And they're also becoming more inclusive, meaning localized content that makes it easy to understand, for Africans, right? And I think investment in education is going to be very critical to us, coming out successful in this fourth industrial revolution. But one other point I'd like to add is, I think leading in 4IR is far-fetched, to be very honest. I think the focus should be on competing, like, understanding where we have come from. Competing should actually be the goal in the next, 10 to 15 years, right? Right now we have a lot of, grassroots issues. Examples are like internet, penetration, that is improving, but it's still a problem. I saw a company in the United States recently announced they would stop employing Nigerian engineers because the internet speed in the country doesn't meet their standards, right? Or I'm collaborating on the project, and team members in another country are experiencing load shedding, so they don't meet timelines, right? So we can't, with those grassroots foundation problems, we can't even be thinking of leading. I think the focus should actually be on, on competing, in the space. And I'm glad with the work, from collaborating with professors at University of Johannesburg, there's this acceptance of the corporate world, right, and collaborating with us to actually develop curriculum that makes people more employable.
So I like that you focus on two things, and I want to deal with those two words actually with you before I introduce Mark. You spoke about inclusivity and you spoke about being competitive. How are we going to be inclusive when from an internet penetration, we are only at about 40% across continent-wide, and then the cost of data in the continent is generally prohibitive? So how can, I don't understand how we're going to reconcile the two. Are we ever going to be able to reconcile the two?
Yes, I think, and to add more, points on what I mean by inclusive, right? If you look at our curriculum, right, and it hasn't always taken, the technology into consideration, right? 5-6 years ago, people would only be hearing about technology in like grade 11, grade 12, and great work the Department of Education is doing around creating a subject for coding and robotics. But I think we should be doing more than that, actually, because if we look at what's happening in the world, software is not a standalone field anymore. Software is now embedded in everything we do in our day-to-day lives. So instead of creating standalone subjects, why don't we embed elements of software engineering into every subject, right? So people can see the value. Good example, why, while studying geography, I didn't know, the calculations that the pilot uses with software to keep our life safe at 30,000 feet, right? If we be able to embed software into the different subjects, as opposed to creating it at standard, embed and coding and technology into a different subject, as opposed to making it standalone, we would have a higher chance of making it more inclusive and triggering interest, in young people.
Well, I want to bring in Mark into the space, because every year he releases the NANDO report, which really looks about digital trends in the continent. So I'm trying to measure a few things that I'm hearing now, both from Prof's need for us to fast track our transition to this digital era, and your area and us for being competitive, based with the issues that Miranda has spoken about, or I think it's not issues or solutions he's talking about from cybersecurity. Mark is an African speaker, is an author, but I think mostly he's well known around East Africa and most of the continent for founding NANDO and for his NANDO report, focusing his company around digital strategy. Mark, in the report that's come out now, how are many of these subjects are featuring? How are we doing as a continent in terms of digital technology adoption and all that? I don't even want to say 4IR yet. I'm not even sure if that's part of our language right now in the continent.
Thank you, Thebe, and happy to be here. I appreciate you inviting me. So if I can take your question right after giving some remarks to Prof. So I agree with Prof on a few things, and there's some that I actually disagree, respectfully so, because he's my senior and likely my elder if you just look at it traditionally speaking. But what I find that I agree with him on is that it's a question of leadership. It's a question of leadership that we're talking. There are people who have told the types of stories that they have flown into countries. The ease of doing business has been straightforward. We're talking about, no under the table, very frustrating situations. One of the best illustrations of corruption I ever heard was a time I was in India, and I was listening to a famous public intellectual there who was giving a talk, and he said there's corruption of omission and corruption of commission. So corruption of omission is I come in, I'm ready to start the new business. I'm ready to start the manufacturing center, to make microchips, to start some really great IT work here, to actually start a tech startup that would need a banking license, would need A, B, C in place. And guess what happens? I go to the regulator. I'm frustrated out of my mind. Weeks, months, I start paying lawyers a big retainer to lobby for me. Weeks, months, we get nowhere, right? And sometimes it's as simple as, oh, I'm so sorry, sir, we can't find your file. Or, oh, you know what, you're bringing some foreign direct investment. There's some tax, there's this, that you have to pay, these hoops you have to jump through. So that corruption is actually frustrating you until the point you're like, okay, fine, I get it. You want something for me to be able to do some business here. So sometimes that happens. And that's where it's a leadership question of how do leaders in the highest positions in the land deal to make things straightforward, straight and narrow and simple for people who want to do business either locally, right, and regionally, and certainly cross-continentally. Then secondly, the one of commission is very straightforward. Somebody, a traffic policeman pulls you over, you don't have the time of day, and somebody here or there in a capital city of your choosing on the continent says, hey, hey chief, I just don't have time for this. I'm going to, I'm trying to find, I'm going to proposition you on a bribe. Now, with both of those, I think my key question remains leadership, right? But the place where I disagree, and that I agree with Prof, but where I disagree respectfully is on his phrase, and I know he was paraphrasing, that we were sort of just watching as the first, second, and third revolution hit us. He's actually quite right about the first two. The third, I disagree respectfully, only because I think that, fine, it may not have been because of leadership that we got somewhere in the third industrial revolution. But thanks to our mobile phones and our devices, we got somewhere. We got to somewhere we have mobile payments. We got to somewhere where we are actually one of the key, if you ask the GSMA, the Global GSM Association, we are one of the fastest growing and with the highest ceiling for growth continents. We're one of the, they call the last billion, so to speak. So there's high upside for us in devices, in technology, in connectivity, and in what people have come to call leapfrogging. I still believe we contributed something because for the longest time, whether you're in Los Angeles or you're in London or you're in Sydney, you could make a mobile payment faster within the African continent and more innovatively. And it works the same on a Nokia 3310 as an iPhone 12 Pro. And they would gaze in amazement and say, you did what? It's going to take me a couple of minutes to figure this out. But you guys in Africa.
You're right. I was in Somalia and I was in a car in Mogadishu and a security man came to our car and he asked the driver, asked our driver for some money to buy one cigarette. And the driver says, what's your number? So we text him something quickly. And then he says, cheers, good to see you. So I said to him, what has happened? He was asking for money. He says, 95% of our transactions here are on mobile. It was that quick and that instantaneous. So you're right, when it comes to mobile payments, certainly in East Africa, Kenya, Somalia,
sure.
You're leading us in that area. And we're happy to be on your coattails as fellow Africans.
For sure. And so for me, I think that's the first one. Yeah.
Where else are we leading that you are finding from your report?
Yeah, so from our trend report, I think one of the areas we are leading right now, I would say, and you could, this might excite Prof. For me, I'm a bit more concerned, but Kenya just instituted a digital service tax. And it said to the Facebooks and to the Twitters and to the Googles of the world that something has to be paid here. Now, I don't want to get into the tax, the collection, the administration, the governance, because we will be here all day. But that was bold, because what that has said is, and in many ways, you could argue, okay, is this good, is it bad? It's being passed back on to everyday citizens. The WhatsApp entrepreneurs who take, their products, lay them on a floor, take photos, put it on their status. So for us, we said that for all these gig contractors, right, the people who ride a motorcycle taxi, for a safe border, right, and take you from A to B, that digital tax is going to touch that gentleman. The people who are doing your Uber Eats and bringing your meal over, it's going to touch that. The person who's, riding you in, or taking you for a ride in an Uber, etc. So it is going to be felt at that level. And that's a concern I have, because I get it. You want to tax the big guys, take some of the ad money. But for me, you have to be careful to stimulate the economy just as much as you're ready to tax and collect it. And so that's one of the digital trends we had.
So, so I don't think one will be stimulating the economy. And when you go to, and I want to get Miranda involved in this conversation here, is one of the areas, problematic areas within the continent, particularly when it comes to governments using the technology as a political tool, whether it is in Ethiopia or Uganda or many other countries, they just shut down the internet. Miranda, I saw a report that says, as a continent, we lost about $2 billion in 2019. I imagine it's also when they are switching on and off this technology, Miranda, it must also be a security risk for the continent, isn't it?
This is actually more like a human rights thing, right? Because this, yeah, because then you are actually just misusing power in a, like, no one actually owns the internet. Let's start there. It's like an open global protocol for all of us to use, right? But obviously, because countries buy infrastructure to make sure we have this level of connectivity, what governments actually do is just like an invasion of human rights more than it's an invasion of anything else, right? Because they've actually politicized the use of the internet, right? Because they know if you can jump on Twitter, you can jump on all these other platforms, you can make your voice heard, you can be an active participant in your society. So that issue is mostly a human rights one, because I mean, if you're not connected to the network, if no one connects to the network, you're kind of putting me out of a job, right? Because then we are there to actually facilitate a safe connectivity. So this is mostly like an issue of human rights.
So it's an issue of human rights. Kola, if it's an issue of human rights, as one of the most seasoned thinkers in this area of development, software and all those development, you're trying to get rid of these humans, right? So nobody will be fighting for rights anymore. I know I started the topic with Prof, but I still have a fundamental worry that this 4IR is really going to wipe out our human beings. Well, how are you managing the two in your solutions? How are you looking at while we are driving technology, technological development or integration of technology into everything, we are not at the same time leaving everybody behind. I want to measure those two things from what Prof said and what you spoke about. I don't know if it's inclusivity or right now if it is consideration. Kola.
All right, no, thanks so much. I mean, a big thing with, I saw a couple of projects in the AI space where, people of color did not have enough data set, or the data set wasn't included in current AI models, which created a room for errors, right? Issues like that can be solved if we represented on panels or advisory committees, at the global level, because they would be picked up at that stage. So I expect a lot more, people of color to be active in the space so that we can actually, be represented, globally, right? So So yeah, that's where I see that on being inclusive. And now talking about consideration, you know, people say AI would not, you know, cannot end the war, but I come from the point of view that it can, right? If not managed correctly. Because if you look at AI at its core, we're giving decision-making abilities to machines, right? And you know, to give you a clear, and once we do this, there's a higher chance for a single point of failure to affect everyone on a large scale. So, give you an example. Let's say an airline moves all decision making to an artificial intelligence model, and there's a problem in the model, and it gets 5,000 planes to take off at the same time, and there are collisions. That's a major problem, right? So I think a big part of AI, you know, it should be the testing of these systems, you know, in a ring-fence situation, and also a lot of, you know, error management, to make sure that they don't, what we build to help society doesn't become a problem. I don't know if you've seen sometimes WhatsApp is down, right? And when WhatsApp is down for 5 seconds, everyone's spilling it across the world, right? And that's what happens when one system has so much power, you know, in today's world.
So I'm glad you use that example, Kola, in terms of when WhatsApp is down, when internet is down. Are we now enslaved to technology? Because technology is supposed to make life easy. And with all these solutions in your space that people in your industry are coming up with, are we not creating a new type of enslavement? Because Kola, you've seen everywhere we go, everybody is now just facing this thing, and just interacting with this piece of equipment. But what I've also seen in Japan and many other Asian countries, they no longer have girlfriends and boyfriends. They now have AI-powered machines, which apparently can now also feel, and they can also do things that we could do before. Are we not enslaved, Kola? Yeah, you can see I'm worried about this concept.
Cool. So I think addiction is a real problem. At some point, I check my stats on my iPhone and say, okay, man, I'm now using it 6 hours a day, you know, 12 hours a day, you know, and I think it's a problem. And there are a couple of startups or, you know, companies across the world trying to create solutions, especially for children, right? You know, that are addicted, and you know, you want to be able to, you know, make sure that, you know, their lives are, you know, on the right path, right? But the truth is, it's also our day-to-day life, right? Everyone here that goes to work, you know, you are required to sit in front of a computer to do your day-to-day activities that actually enables you to get paid and live life, right? So it's becoming a way of life, right? You know, and I think it is here to stay. We just need tools to be able to manage how we engage, you know, with technology, because I think so far it's done more good than harm, I believe, and restricting it is not an option. We just need to be able to build tools, you know, that enables people to use it in a healthy manner.
So it's become part of life. It's also become part of marketing, or is it now the new marketing and building brands? Because and I was just looking at some of the shifts in advertising spend. It seems that there is a whole reversal, Mark, where the money is now in your space. You seem to be in a good space, Mark, where you are having decided to go into this space much earlier than many people.
Yeah, I'd love to reply to something Kola just touched on. So one of the things that at Nendo we've determined is, for Africa, one of the things we forget is that globally, Netflix, Amazon, Google, Apple, you name the big company, they believe that as long as there's persistent internet connectivity, and obviously in some countries it's there, then the race is for your time and your attention. Your time and your attention. The thing they forget about sub-Saharan Africa in particular is there's a third thing that's looming. And in many cases, it's a ceiling that's very hard to cross. And that is people's limited prepaid mobile data bundles. So for us in 2019, we published a report called The State of Mobile Data. And the big challenge we said if there's a central bank there that knows where money is coming in and out, us guys at Nendo have to look where megabytes are going in and out, because that says that I have limited connectivity every day and I will prioritize some few things. So the framework that we use with our clients, and we publish this freely for a couple years now, is we have what we call 5 S's. And I say, whether you're in Lagos or you're in Nairobi, you're in Kampala or Kigali, or you're in the Central African Republic, you name it. Part of this, if not all of it, is true. Where mobile money especially is there, one of these in particular becomes more true. But these 5 S's are, first, search. Google is the preeminent and most visited site. I don't think there's a single African country where this is not the case. So Google is in the lead, both with Android and with also their search engine. Secondly is sport. Now this is a surprise for some, right? I was doing a training this week with some marketing senior leaders in Uganda. I just finished this morning, and I showed them how I said, "What club do you support? What club do you support?" And then I showed them that the 5th most Googled word of 2020, even with the pandemic, was not the word COVID. Arsenal was there. I said, you guys better be Arsenal supporters, because clearly your nation searches for this one club more than any other. In fact, I said, and Arsenal are not doing great, so all the more reason to search for them. I beg your pardon for the Arsenal fans. But sport is there, not just for watching and passively consuming, but sports betting. And good or bad, whether you like it or hate it, what we've seen is that in the last 5 years, especially where countries have mobile money, has been one of the biggest recruiters of new internet users. People who knew there's internet, but kept an old phone. And then as they begin to place bets, because they're watching the game anyway, they get a smartphone, they start searching up what odds are, and it gets them to use the internet or visit a cyber cafe for a whole new reason. So first, search; second, sport. Third is sex. So adult websites, whether we love it, we hate it, we talk about it, they're there. So you give somebody 100 megabytes or 100 gigabytes, in our view, they're going to do one of these 5. And we've published a whole report, like a 40-something page report on this, but I'm just summing it up. So sex is third. The fourth is social. I don't need to say much. Africans love social media, particularly Facebook. It's the largest in the continent. And fifth is stories. We'll have local music, local content, entertainment, and so on. So now you take those, right? And the interesting thing I'll tell you, Thebe, is you take WhatsApp. Recently, we had this whole hula baloo. I'm saying this because Kola inspired me to respond to this. And WhatsApp goes down for a bit. Obviously, we're up in arms. Now, I challenged people. The day that WhatsApp started its privacy policy, I said, are you able to leave? And they're like, yeah, let's leave. I was in so many groups. And they're like, we're up in arms. We've started a Telegram group. I said, I am one of the most chilled out people. So I don't like to be aggressive. I don't like to make big statements. I said, I put money down. No one is leaving. I said, the only people who can leave are the wealthy. And I said, they're wealthy for not the reason you expect. It's not money. It is the fact that they are able to say, I have so much social capital, I can leave WhatsApp. I can leave my church or mosque group. I can leave my high school, primary school, university, master's course training groups. I can leave my work colleagues. Because right now, one of our 2021 trends is that WhatsApp is the workplace messaging tool of choice. Forget email, it's WhatsApp. And how do you govern that? Especially in many African countries, sales guys will tell you, I WhatsApp my clients. I don't email, I maybe call them, but I WhatsApp them and they respond instantly. Right? So this is the challenge. So I told people, if you have the guts to leave Telegram, it's because you're happy to leave your mom and your cousins and your relatives behind. And that's why WhatsApp has such a grip and a hold that people are not going to leave. In fact, people would give up Facebook before they give up WhatsApp, because WhatsApp is intimate. It's my SIM card. It's my contacts. It's personal. And so for me, I think as a marketer, we're looking not just at the trends, we're also helping clients navigate the maze of things to find which platforms to touch people on and get a message out to them. Thanks, Thebe.
We'll talk about that. So I like that. I used to be an Arsenal fan, so I don't know why I changed. Then I moved to Liverpool. and then Liverpool is showing us flames this year. So, I keep going because the sport is emotional. So as an emotional person, you should keep moving. So I'm glad that sport was on the list, and I know why, because we want to examine the Formula One back. But I want to take a couple of questions from the platform before we switch, before I begin to wrap up. The one question here I asked got was, can machines reach the level of creativity that human beings have? Can machines reach the level of creativity? And let's ask a developer, and let's ask somebody like Kola. Kola, can machines really, I know Prof said, they are smarter, they are faster, they are better. How can they really reach the level of creativity, Kola, that human beings have? One of the questions come through.
Thanks, Thebe. I think they can, if given the right input. We're starting to see cases where ads for social media have been automated, it's possible. And if you look at such models and how smart this systems can get, it's possible machines can reach that level of creativity. I think machines would be, if given the right data, would be able to solve Nigeria's traffic problem, right? By connecting robots so that, people can move at the right time, right? That's not that I can't solve on paper. I need to feed in data and take advantage of global, technical innovation to make such innovation, technical solutions happen. So I believe, that's possible. There are machines these days. There's a startup design that can take your company idea and spit out a brand identity, right? We've seen at the beginning of COVID, IBM had their supercomputer running multiple computations to be able to figure out, the best, the most accurate epidemiological models. So machines could become, could match human creativity. I think where we can't feed data for them to actually dominate is when it comes to the human connection, right? Which is also a big part of the future, right? I see technology, I see AI and machine as an enabler, right? Okay, you have a problem with your bank, wrong transaction, you reach out to machines, you reach out to a person and they'll be able to use the machine to get real-time data and be able to solve your situation as fast as possible, right? But to your question, machines can reach that level of creativity if fed the right input.
If fed the right tool. I like your choice of words. So they're going to be eating your food as well. Miranda, it's not a security question, but multidisciplinary thinker, and I'm sure you can. I know for certain you have an answer for this as a Pan-Africanist. The question is, what is hindering Africa from taking full advantage of 4IR? I think we tried to speak about a few of them, but a question came through on the platform. What is hindering us, Miranda? Are we full speed ahead?
I think all the guys have kind of touched on this, but I think one of the things for me, it could go back to why did we take so long to even adopt some of the things in 3IR, right? I think we need to just contextualize a lot of things for the continent, right? Because if you think about the 4IR, it's not entirely going to bring new technology, right? It's going to just use the current technology, the current protocols to actually change the way we do things, right? If you even think about Airbnb and all those things, they didn't use new technology. They used things that were already new, but they changed the way we did things, right? So I think what we need to do, which is the best thing about also working in threat intelligence, is that I've learned that there's so much beauty in actually looking inward, right? Because most of the time when people want to do defense, they want to know how is the attacker going, what will they hack, right? Or what are they doing? Did Google get hacked? How did they get hacked, right? But for you to actually start making actual tangible value out of that information is asking, what is first similar between myself and Google, right? And let's say if it wasn't Google, but what were the techniques that were used there, right? And will those techniques actually work on me? And everyone else can lose their mind, like, oh, we're gonna get hacked. And you could be literally the most calmest person because you feel like, in my context, this does not apply, or in my context, I'm actually ready. And I think that's how we need to actually approach this is, yes, the global world can go in one direction, they can make their own noise, but until we actually like look inward into the continent and say, what are the problems we actually need to solve, right? And what are the problems that 3IR can solve before we jump to 4, right? And then we say, what subsets of 4IR is actually going to be important. Like when Prof did the whole presentation, he showed like it's different aspects that actually make up 4IR, right? We don't have to adopt everything, right? But I also say that sometimes it's so hard to be super creative when you think with an empty stomach. Like when you think from a place of poverty can be hard. For other people, it's a driver. For other people, it's like, I just want to focus on just eating, making sure that there's a plate, right? But I do think like with the growing middle class in the continent, right, or specifically in South Africa, I think we do give ourselves a little bit of our brain power, the freedom. So it's like that there's a small part of your brain that was just thinking about food. Now that you've sort of joined the middle class, you have different problems, right? But I also think when you have these kind of different problems, you should also be thinking about like harder problems that you can solve that maybe other people who are even more smarter than you don't have the capacity because their mind is so clouded with basic needs. Your mind has been freed of the basic needs, right? And I'm not saying people with basic needs can't do this, but I'm just saying like also as someone who comes from poverty, is that I do see the shift in my thinking when I'm no longer thinking it through my stomach, but also allowing myself to be creative and really start thinking, what are the subsets of problems that I, specifically Miranda, think I can solve, right? And I think, again, before I even start like investing all of my time, I ask myself, what investment is this going to be to the continent? What is the return value? And sometimes it doesn't necessarily mean you have to work in the continent. You can still partner with global partners that are intentional about the growth of this continent. We're a global community now. We can't be so isolated as a continent, but we need to find ways to use these people who say they want to be our allies while they come, other cases, they come taking their resources. We need to play the same trick, right? They have the infrastructure, they have some of the thought leaders in this space, they are the leading ones in the research, right? How do we piggyback, right? But contextualize it because they can't live an African child's life, they can live my life. So my responsibility as an African is to take all that like first world intellectual property that we have and bring it back to the continent. That's my opinion. I don't know how everyone else feels, but I really think like we are the one continent that has the most problems to solve. We have educated young people, the likes of Kola and Mark need to put their brains together and start really prioritizing the kinds of products, technological products that they want to solve and give to the continent, and they need to be like as viral as possible into the continent. Everyone is like, oh my gosh, I want to use that product from Bridge Labs because I felt like in the creation, they thought about me, they see me. Everyone wants to be seen, heard, and that's what we need to do. We need to see each other and we need to create for each other.
So, you know, I like when you talk about the politics of the stomach. That's how we run the world, Miranda, from the stomach, because our priorities are different in this continent. But there's another question here from the platform. The question is, where should tech companies draw the line when it comes to ethics? We're seeing how they are exploiting our data. Mark, maybe you can answer that question. How do you draw the line? How do you draw the line? Because people are worried that, you know, companies are exploiting this.
Oh, Thebe, I'm going to be controversial, Thebe. Are you ready?
I'm ready for your controversy.
Okay, two things. I think people don't care about privacy. That's one. I think people claim to care, but I don't think they care. I don't think it matters. That ship has sailed, the horse has left the barn. There's no turning this elephant back from where it came from. Let me explain. I think people, and part of this I borrowed from Seth Godin, you guys might know him. He says, and it's a bit of a crude analogy, so pardon me, but I think it's a good one. He says, it's not that people care about privacy, they just don't want to be surprised. He says, your credit card company knows everything about you. If they figure out you're buying flowers, or mobile money is a good example, they find out you're buying flowers and paying for hotels and don't seem to be going with your significant other or spouse. What you don't want is to be surprised with them saying, hey, would you like if we recommended a certain, trip to the, to check for, an STD or venereal disease. Now that's again extreme, but what he's trying to say there is by the time you you're not dealing with cash and you're not dealing with smoke signals. You have a phone that is tracking you day and night and selling and trading that data on your behalf. The ship has effectively somewhat sailed. And the principle he's bringing at here, I'll bring you a bit closer to home. You take, let me give you an example right now. This is the challenge we face, Thebe, and this is about data as well. If you're in Sierra Leone, right now, today, as we talk here on Zoom, if you wanted to buy a smartphone, it would take the average person 194 days of working to pay for that thing. Wow. If you're in Niger or you're in Madagascar or Uganda, it's going to be less than a month, but it's going to cost real hard cash and disposable income that's hard to find in COVID. Now, what does that mean? The fourth industrial revolution has had its waves where people have thought, you know what, it's all about to change. Let me give an example. So in the 90s, they said, oh, when the ATM comes, it's going to render humans jobless. This automated teller machine that can count money, you guys are done for, right? It can process checks, take deposits, you guys are finished. And guess what happened? It could never replace the relationship. And that's just what I think Miranda was also alluding to, right? What's the thing in Africa with our skills and expertise we can play to? It's the relationship. Now to your question about privacy and data, right? I believe that when this person gets the smartphone, let's compare and contrast the fintech company and the traditional bank. Traditional bank says, Thebe, come to the bank tomorrow at 11 a.m. You're a high-flying gentleman. You're in my country the other day. We couldn't link up. Now you're back home in your car. You just came off a plane. Now here's the thing. They tell you to come at 11. You're like, why? Why do you want to waste my time? I'd rather be on a jet than I want to be in the bank. Here's what they say to a person in Nairobi. They say, and it's not actually the banks, because these are what the disruptors say. They say, have you been able to just afford a phone? Download my app. In 5 minutes, I will upload every call you have made in the last 90 days. I'll see how often you call your mom, how often you call your friends. And that's one of 10,000 data points. I'll read every SMS on your phone. I'll have you fill in something for 2 minutes and I can give you $20 US. No paperwork, no calling you to the bank at 11. This industrial revolution right now is there, and that's AI. Now, to be fair, there's some problems with this approach, but in Africa, there's all sorts of things being built right now, but they require data. And Africans are more than happy to trade data for convenience. So privacy is a non-issue. It only comes up in the wealthy, or those who have social capital, or those who have disposable income. Not everyone else. Sad to say, but it's a fact.
I want to go back to Miranda on this point. Miranda, very briefly, I know you disagree with him completely, Miranda, because he says privacy is out of the window. But Miranda, you're in banking, you're in cybersecurity. I'm sure privacy, matter of fact, is one of the first things that you sign people up to, Miranda.
It's literally our business, right? I think at the core of it, it's consent, right? I want, like, if you tell me what you're going to do with my data, and you also tell me first, I'm going to keep your data safe, right? These are the people that will have access to your data. This is what they're going to do with your data. The issue is that that dialogue never happens between institutions and users. So that's where I disagree a little bit, because like even in a corporate network, right? If you're in a corporate network, there's some level of privacy that is invaded in the name of security. We haven't been good at like detecting things that are encrypted, right? So what we do, we open the packet, we look specifically for what we are looking for, and then we move on with life, right? We don't start middling around looking who you're talking to and all of those things. But for instance, if corporate says you can't use our network to go to a porn site or these sites, we have the right to go ahead and look. But you've also been told that we will look, and you consented to that, and you also had an understanding why that is happening. What is happening like now is that there isn't that dialogue. You don't tell me why you're actually getting access to my data, what kind of things you're going to do, because sometimes I'm like, I'm really okay, right? Because if you're gonna suggest something I was going to need anyways, and you give me a better place to get a better deal, great, right? But if you're gonna bring me more other problems, then it's an issue because I didn't consent to that. So I wouldn't say people don't care for their privacy. They do, but they wanna understand what is the benefit of me giving away the understanding of that I am keeping my data private and you are keeping it safe, you're not selling it to anyone. I need to understand, there's to be a trade-off. I'm safe, you safe, I'm benefiting, you benefiting, not just like a giveaway. Consent is like one of the biggest issues. And like what you're saying, WhatsApp is kind of trapping us because we are now sometimes giving consent, people without really understanding what's going to happen to this data, because there's this like we've attached, it's so centered at like our social communications with the people we love, the way we do business, right? But it's like, I think like we need to respect each other as from a human to human being, and like, it's my data, at least give me the understanding why I'm doing this and I should consent, right? That's where I disagree, right? It's not like people don't care.
It's they just have to consent. In wrapping up, Kola, I want you to bring these three things for me together. I want to bring this concept of privacy and a lack of access, so accessibility in terms of internet penetration and all those, and the solutions that you're coming with. What do we need to do in the continent to overcome these challenges of privacy? Because like Mark says, we shouldn't care. Everybody knows that business anyway is going to be out there. Surely, as a developer, you're not developing solutions where people can just quote unquote access information as they want. And particularly, I think one of your solutions in higher education, because then I could just grade myself and put in whatever I want.
Cool. So thanks for the question. I believe tech innovation has moved faster than regulation, right? And the people that are meant to protect us don't even know much about what is happening, right? If you look at, micro lending and all this breach of privacy to be able to give people loans, if the right people were, part of the regulatory bodies and they knew how much damage this could cause or how much privacy, that is being breached in rebuilding these models, they should have been able to put a framework to hold these companies accountable. And that's a big problem we would continue to face because, another point you need to take into consideration is it's compete or die. That is the game of tech. Biggest companies trying to employ the best talent and come up with the best ways to, to provide, to add value. And as long as these big companies are looking for the best, are trying to provide the best ROI platform to you without a regulatory body that knows about what's going on, they would always be finding ways to outperform each other, right? So to give you a clearer example, if Google didn't go in and interconnect their systems to be able to make sure the returns on Google ads are much higher, are much higher, another company would have done it and the market would have moved to that audience because they had provided better return on investment. So as long as we don't have regulation, this will always be a problem, right? I mean, regulation that evolves as fast as the tech innovation, right? But another big pressing problem,
Yeah, please go ahead.
But another big pressing problem that I see a lot of people are not touching on in the 4IR space is brain drain. Like, what I'm starting to see is really talented African talent, leaving the continent to better opportunities that pays them in better currency and in advanced in dollars or pounds, and provides them with a better way of life. That's a big problem we're going to face. We've seen a lot of our senior engineers leaving the continent, not giving back, right? And I think the brain drain is a serious one, that we all need to have on our hands and come up with a solution. Because if you look at the evolution of this industrial revolution, people haven't really tapped into Africa because, let's say, we were not globally relevant with those skill sets. Now we are now globally, we now have an opportunity to compete and be globally relevant. Understanding our history, right? People who are now the shining stars in the field have better opportunities outside the continent. And that's a big problem we have on our hands. I have a lot of friends who I'll reach out to catch up to, and they're like, oh no, I'm now living in Ireland, I work for Google, or I live in, I live in the US, I just joined the startup and they give me equity. No African company can match that. So we need to build frameworks also to keep this talent. And that's also a big problem I see with 4IR.
It's about, like you say, we need to compete or we're going to die. And we need to keep the technology, or we need to keep the brains in the continent. I don't know how we're going to do that, Mark, because from a marketing perspective, from a digital strategy perspective, just between, to start with, the advertising has risen the highest in digital than it has in the traditional media. But what's even more interesting, about 73% or 72% of the advertising in digital, all is in 3 platforms: Google, YouTube, and Facebook. Mark, we cannot compete. How is the continent going to compete? Because the money is not even coming to the platform that we are creating.
Yeah, Thebe, I hear you. And maybe just for avoidance of doubt, I was being a bit provocative with my last comment. If you check out, I'm a big privacy advocate. Like, and I want to say this because I don't want Miranda being like, yeah, Mark, he's some weirdo guy. Like, like talking about privacy, the guy said the other. So if you check out like our 2019 report, we were on national TV, newspapers here in Kenya and all over media across Africa, talking about alternatives. If you want privacy, it will cost you a bit, but because, like you're saying, Thebe, Google, Facebook, competing with these companies is very hard. But the thing is, as long as you give them your data and you participate freely on their platform, there's a phrase that said, and I'm sure Kola and Miranda know it well, if it is free, you are the product. If you can use my service for free, I'm selling you. You're the one being bought, sold, and traded. And so if you want places to migrate, we recommended everything from VPNs to browsers to email services to search engines in our 2019 report. I just wanted to get that out there, so because I look like a bit of a nut job if I don't say that. But coming to your point about how we compete, honestly, look, you take Diamond Platinums who just got 1 billion views, I think, plus on YouTube. You take Burna Boy who just picked up the Grammy. You take some of the biggest artists across the world, and they're building on top of these platforms too. That's the matter of fact here. So at a certain point, we have to use those platforms to grow and advance ourselves by shifting from being what I call passive consumers. I just get in the infinite scroll, etc., to being active contributors, right? Kola, I'm probably gonna butcher this, but I'm like, we need to contribute code, not just pull it down from Stack Overflow and GitHub, etc., but find ways to get our minds to where we're creating IP. We're actually making things for the problems we have here. Because, and I'm touching, I guess, on everyone. Like Miranda said, this continent has an unlimited number of problems, some that are caused by our fellow citizens and brothers and sisters here, others that we just can't help. But here's the thing, necessity is the mother of invention. So we have the chance to be more innovative and inventive than anyone else in this 4th industrial revolution. So for me, it's collaborate, build on top, cooperate, and also compete, just like Kola said.
Thank you. So it's about collaboration as well as compete. Miranda, in one second, it's quite interesting, this area of cybersecurity and all those. I see Zimbabwe is pressing ahead with the cyber crime bill, which seems to legalize the detentions of social media users. Surely, so although you're in the cybersecurity or threat intelligence, are you also now a policeman? Are we going to be limiting people's ways of how they do business, how they live, and how they interact? In 1 second, Miranda, as we
I think I'm going to choose to not look at the social impact on these kind of things, right? But I want to talk about something very serious, right? I think it's been said over and over again that if we ever have a world war, right, it won't be combat. It will be in the cyberspace. And I think we really need to continuously be very harsh when it comes to punishing cyber criminals. Because if you think about like all these things we're talking about 4IR, imagine that there's been situations where there's been ransomware and ransom us from hospitals. These are human lives. We bring technology into hospitals because we want to make things, we're being innovative, right? Imagine if you are shutting down the system of a hospital while there's thousands of people open on the table, with doctors that have grown some level of dependency on the technology we've given them. To me, that's literally an act of terrorism, right? You've actually killed a couple of people within seconds. And I think we really, really need to start having like strong cyber laws, cyber policies, whether they're regulating criminals or corporates, the way they actually share the information. I really think like what Kola was saying, technology is moving way faster than regulation. And I think we need, as a continent, as a country, we need to start paying attention to like the policies, everything, criminal, whatever it is, to make sure that people are actually safe as we do a lot of these connection to the internet. So I really do believe that we should take this whole cyber criminal very, very seriously and maybe have like harsher punishments as like you've attempted murder kind of thing. Like if people die, yeah.
Miranda, this is serious. But on that note, Miranda Nyathi, Threat Intelligence Specialist at Standard Bank, I thank you so much for your insights today. It's been really, I feel like I'm living today a bit smart about this 4IR, digital, cybersecurity, all that stuff that I used to read, but I didn't read as well as I learned today. Thank you so much, Kola, Olajide, co-founder of Bridge Labs, for your incredible insights today as well. I'm taking away with you that we need to compete or to get out of the way, I think, in many ways. So compete or get or die, and that we need to do something about retaining the talent here. Kaigwa, always fascinating talking to you. I'm taking those 5 S's with me. Mark, I'm going to be checking out myself whether I've been also on those S's, searching, sports, sex, social, and stories. I think I'm the sport guy. I think I raised up your numbers in sports and I raised your numbers maybe in stories as well. But most importantly as well, thank you so much to Professor Tshilidzi Marwala from the University of Johannesburg. Guys, it's been fascinating. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. Until the next time, I'm Thebe Ikalafeng, and thank you to you, and we'll catch up with you next time.